parents demand that my daughter date their son to help his self-esteem. I'm a little late to posting this as it took place 3 years ago, back in 2023, but figured now is as good a time as any to write about this. Additionally, ages mentioned here were how old we were back in 2023. 3 years ago, my eldest daughter, who I'll call AZ, 17 female, graduated from high school. She and a couple of her friends decided to do a gap year to do things like go to Taylor Swift's Eras Tour show in LA and travel across Southern Europe. Now, earlier, further back, she was having troubles with an autistic boy who I'll call FS, male 19, who became obsessed with my daughter AZ, kept trying to ask her out, took photos of her right in front of her, etc. Now, I won't get into too much detail with this part, as it deserves its own separate post. But long story short, AZ told me and my husband Jack, male 48, and we got the school involved. One night, FS's parents showed up uninvited at our home. FS has been stalking my daughter, so he knew where we lived. FS's parents tried to get us to withdraw our complaint, telling us FS was special and harmless. How our complaint against their son was causing him stress, demanding that my daughter, AZ, apologize to FS for calling him a creep and a loser. FS's dad demands AZ at least give FS a shot, as it would help his self-esteem issues. They only left when police showed up and told them to leave. FS was later forced to change schools. P.S. I myself am autistic, but I do generally recognize boundaries and basic respect. Fast forward back to August 2023. My daughter AZ was in LA for the Eras Tour show there, who was going to be jetting off to Europe in a few weeks. From out of the blue, FS's parents ran into me at the supermarket parking lot and tried talking to me about their son and how he's still into my daughter. They told me that FS was still stalking my daughter, and apparently he had heard about my daughter's plans to move to California to live with my in-laws and study at Berkeley. They again asked, or really demanded, that I get my daughter to abandon her plans to move to California, as it would hurt FS's chances with her. That FS didn't have any other friends, and how AZ dating FS would help his self-esteem. I forget to mention that FS did used to be friends with AZ and her friends. Years ago, when FS and his family moved here to Massachusetts, they were originally from Indiana, I think. As FS was a bit of a lonely new kid, AZ did invite him to hang out with her and her friends, and they were accepting of him until FS started being creepy around my daughter. Anyway, back to the parking lot. I asked FS's parents if they thought it was reasonable for my daughter to give up on her plans to go to college, which her grandparents / my in-laws were paying for, to which they went completely silent. FS's mom then tried saying that AZ could spend at least a couple days hanging out with FS to get to know him better, suggesting that rather than a formal date, they could do something small like go to church together, which I pointed out that my daughters and I are Jewish. And no, I admittedly may have aggravated the situation by echoing my daughter, calling their now adult son a creep and a loser. As I was about to get in my car, FS's dad then grabbed my blouse, tearing it open, demanding I apologize, accusing me of getting their son expelled in the first place, and that I'm being insensitive to their son's needs. Another guy, a bystander, who noticed what was going on, asked if I was okay. I shouted at him to call security or something. FS's dad then shouted some racial slurs at the bystander, telling him to mind his own business, but FS's parents ran off when the bystander and his friends started walking over. The bystander again asked if I was okay. I assured him I was, and thanked him for helping. I didn't bother telling my husband about the incident at the parking lot, as I didn't want him to overreact. Today, in 2026, my daughter is in Berkeley, and I last heard FS was arrested over something, but I don't know what. Hey guys, honestly, the most shocking part of this story is that the parents seem more concerned about getting their son a girlfriend than stopping his behavior. Thankfully, the daughter was able to move on and pursue her goals. But if you thought that was bad, wait until you hear the next story. My parents gave my college fund to my brother, so I bought their home. When I was 17, my parents told me they couldn't afford to help with college. It sucked, but I understood. I worked 2 jobs, took out loans, and eventually graduated. A few years later, I found out they had actually spent the college fund on my older brother. My brother had dropped out of college twice, crashed 2 cars, and constantly borrowed money, and my parents always bailed him out. I was angry, but there wasn't much I could do. I stopped talking about it and focused on my career. 10 years later, I was doing well financially. One day, my parents called me in a panic. Apparently, my brother had convinced them to take out loans for one of his business ideas. The business failed, as all of his do. The loans didn't. The bank was preparing to foreclose. As my parents were getting behind on their mortgage payments, they asked if I could lend them some money. I said no. A few weeks later, I got a call from a realtor. The bank was auctioning the property. I went to the auction out of curiosity, and I ended up buying the house. The look on my parents' faces when they found out was something I'll never forget. They assumed I was going to let them stay there for free. Instead, I offered them a lease at a rate far below market value. They were furious. They said I was taking advantage of them. I reminded them that I paid for my own education while they spent my college fund on my brother. For the first time in my life, they had no response. My brother called me selfish. Then he called me a week later asking if I could lend him money. I hung up the phone. Today, my parents still live in the house. It's part of our family and has been for generations. They pay rent on time every month, and my brother hasn't called me in over a year. Hey guys, sometimes karma can happen in a flash, or sometimes it can take years to arrive. But when it does, it arrives all at once. Fortunately for the OP, things worked out in the end. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to bring this video to an end. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.